Hello, welcome back to my channel, or welcome for the first time if you've never seen my videos before. My name is Bryn, I am transgender and non-binary, and I make videos about those topics. Today I wanted to talk about something that I have briefly mentioned in the most recent video that I uploaded, which is that I have a date for bottom surgery. If you haven't been following my channel or you know nothing about me, I was assigned male at birth, came out as a trans woman when I was 18, and non-binary when I was 21. And bottom surgery is something that I've wanted it for a very long time. It's something that I've talked about on this channel, but I had some hurdles along the way, and whether they were physical hurdles or mental hurdles, I can't say hurdles too many times, it sounds weird, but anyways, I had blocks in the way, but I have since removed those blocks, and I want to talk about how I came to this decision and what made me come to this decision, because obviously surgery is a big deal. This specific surgery is very, very invasive. It's a long recovery time. It's not a simple little wave of a magic wand. You can't get back to your life right away. It puts your life on pause. There's a lot of downsides to it. So I want to kind of talk about why this is so important to me, especially as a non-binary person, because I think obviously a lot of people don't quite understand what it means to be non-binary, and also things like surgery like that, which can seem very binary, sometimes might seem strange for a non-binary person to be doing. So I just wanted to kind of give my input on all of it and let y'all know. But if you're interested in figuring out how I came to this decision, then keep watching. So the first thing that I want to talk about, I have dysphoria over that part of my body. And that is a big factor in me wanting to get surgery to have it changed. I think that's a big factor in most people's decisions to get surgeries, when you're trans. Before I start kind of going through the timeline of my dysphoria and all this stuff, I do want to say I don't have the worst dysphoria that I could. Especially with transitioning, I've gotten less and less dysphoria. I've felt more comfortable in general, and even with that part of my body, because I do feel like, although I still feel disconnected from it, I feel that overall my body as a whole feels at least more balanced out than it was, because it's more, the majority of my body is something that I connect with. So I just wanted to put that out there, because I remember I got a comment maybe a few months ago, not super long ago, but they were talking about, not having intense dysphoria, and not knowing if they should get surgery and all this stuff. And I think the understanding or the expectation is that if you're going to get something like surgery, or even start HRT or things like that, or even change your name, or things that might be a little less permanent or less, or I guess a little more minor than something like a very, very invasive surgery, I think the expectation or the assumption is that you must really hate that thing to get rid of it, essentially, whatever the thing is, whether it's your name or a part of your body or whatever. But, I kind of think of it as if you're at a job and you're just, you don't have to hate your job to quit, right? You can be this just isn't making me happy, and I think I'd be happier if I did something in another industry or at another store or whatever, whatever your job is. And, obviously probably quitting your job is probably a little bit easier. But even take that example, you could say, okay, I live in Pennsylvania. I could say, I don't like my job. I want to move to California and do such and such. And that's a big move, and that changes a lot, and that's a big thing. And I don't have to hate where I'm at to want something better. And you can really take that idea and put that to just about anything. But I think when it comes to trans experiences, it's not actually different, but people think that it's different, and people think that you have to be miserable where you are, because a lot of the first trans stories to come around were people who were not happy at all with, not transitioning and stuff. And so, to transition in a time back when when being trans was so much less heard of and probably more difficult than it is in nowadays, you probably did have to have an intense dislike to where you were at in order to change it. That doesn't mean that that's like how everyone is, but that's, I think, how people see transitioning. And so I wanted to put out there that no, I don't hate what I have, but I don't resonate with it, and I would be much, much happier and more fulfilled and would live a life that feels more like my own if I get surgery. And so that is why I'm doing it. To start off with my dysphoria, when I was younger, I remember being like 5 or 6 years old and trying to tuck it away and feeling like I didn't feel right about it, and I didn't know why. I felt better when I couldn't see it. I remember being like a preteen and looking in the mirror at myself, specifically at that part of my body, and just being like I had no idea. Like, that feeling was very intense for sure, which is why I remember it ingrained in my mind. But I didn't know what that feeling was, and I didn't know why I felt it. And as time went on and I started to realize that I was trans, I was like, okay, like, this is what this is. But it took me a long time to feel like I could commit to getting surgery. Because obviously, like I said, and like anyone would know, surgery is a very big deal, especially when it's something so invasive with a long recovery time, blah, 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 all that stuff. And so to commit to that, you know, that's a bigger thing than just fantasizing about it or wanting it or whatever. It's like committing to it is a big deal. And I just in general have a problem with committing to things because I'm always worried that, like, but what if I miss the old thing, or what if I change my mind, kind of thing. I'm very big on personal freedom, and so committing to anything feels like I'm taking away my freedom. And so that played a part in me deciding to get bottom surgery. So what kind of put me on the path to realizing that, like, yes, I definitely do want this and I can actually commit to it now, are a few things. I just learned more about myself. I've talked about this in a few other videos, but there was a time period right when COVID started. I moved an hour and a half away from where I normally lived. Like, I grew up relatively in the same area that I'm in now, but I moved an hour and a half away with my brother, mostly because it was safer there, because there were less people there and COVID was starting, and I have CF and all this stuff. But while I was there, the only people I knew were my brother and our childhood friend that was his roommate. And I was going on walks every day because that was the only fun thing that anyone could do when COVID started. And I realized I was in this town that nobody knew who I was, nobody knew who I used to be, and so this realization came that I can dress however I want or present however I want, and I won't feel that pressure of, like, needing to dress or present in a way that contradicts my assigned gender at birth, if that makes sense. As you can see, like, this is a male flannel and a male sweater, and, like, yeah, clothes don't have gender, blah, 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 I know that. But I'm just saying, like, in general, I feel much more comfortable wearing what is regarded as men's clothing. And for a long time, that made me really insecure because I felt like it just meant that I was actually a man, because if I wasn't a man, why would I want to wear men's clothing, kind of thing. But anyways, I had a lot of freedom in this other town away from where I grew up, and I felt so much more like myself. And once I was able to start presenting this way, I wear backwards hats a lot and men's clothing and all this stuff, I started realizing, like, wow, like, I can really be me. I don't have to be this version of me that proves that I'm not the me that everybody thought I was because of how I was assigned at birth. And I really, like, gained a lot of freedom during that era of my life or whatever. And that was when I came to the conclusion that, like, I definitely want surgery and I can commit to this because I could be myself And I realized that the one thing that didn't feel like me, or not there's one other thing, but I'm not going to get into that. But the one of the things that really didn't feel like me is that part of my body, and I wanted to change that. And so that is how I came to the decision to commit to having surgery. I had actually seen a surgeon a few years before that, and I was told that I didn't weigh enough to be able to get surgery, and it really sucked at the time. I have cystic fibrosis, and I had a lot of trouble gaining weight. I had a lot of lung problems, all this stuff. I was very, 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 very sick. But then a new medication came out in 2019, and I've been much healthier since. And that opened a lot of doors where I can now actually pursue getting bottom surgery, whereas for a long time it was a fantasy, so I didn't have to figure it out. I couldn't even get it, so what's the purpose of even trying to figure out, you know, if I want it or if I don't want it or if I'm comfortable, you know, whatever. But then all these doors opened and I started really thinking about it. Then I moved, and then I was like, yeah, I definitely want this. Now I want to talk about something that helped me figure out what kind of surgery I wanted. And what I mean by that is I spoke about this a while back, that I essentially originally was planning on getting, it's the same surgery, but aesthetically I was gonna have it look more similar to someone who was assigned female at birth who has taken testosterone or is currently on testosterone. I'm not going to get into what the differences are, but it changes the way that things look down there. And I liked the ambiguity that came with that. It really, really resonated with me, with my androgyny and all of that kind of stuff. I've since decided against it and decided to just get the regular kind of surgery where it just looks like someone assigned female at birth who has not been on testosterone. Going forward, talking about these two versions, I'm just going to call them version 1 and version 2. Version 1 is going to be the regular version. Version 2 is going to be the testosterone enhanced version. Like I said, I had decided on version 2, and then I started questioning it because there were times where that didn't feel right. And I was like, are you serious? Like, I'm ready to commit to surgery, but I still don't even know what I want. And it was frustrating. And I had this realization, which it's one of those things that, like, you know how you can know something like your whole life or for years or however long, but then like at one point it hits different and you like feel it and you're like, oh yeah. So I had this realization. This is something that I already knew, but I didn't feel it for myself. Essentially that I didn't have to have version 2 in order to be androgynous, because I associated version 1, for myself anyways, with femininity and version 2 with androgyny. And it makes things a little confusing because I sometimes like present on the feminine side, and that was when I would feel weird about version 2. And then the opposite would happen, where when I was androgynous, I would feel weird about version 1. But once I had this realization, I could feel androgynous and feel okay with version 1. So what I started doing was I downloaded the calendar app, and every day I had 6 categories, and I would rate them 1 through 10, 10 being the strongest or the best, 1 being the worst, don't want it. And there were 6 categories, which were androgyny, femininity, version 1, version 2, flat chest, and regular chest. Because that's something, I've talked about that before. If you're interested in that, I have a video that I'll leave up here and in the description box down below. But regardless, I had these 6 categories, and every day I would type them out and I would rate them 1 through 10. And what I noticed was that I was comfortable with version 1, regardless of whether I felt feminine or androgynous, whereas I felt really, really good with version 2 on my androgynous days, and then not good with version 2 on my feminine days. And so I felt like, and there were also times where I actually felt really good with version 1 on my androgynous days. But I think overall, like, if I was gonna be 100% androgynous always and never have another feminine feeling in my life, yeah, I would go with version 2. But overall, version 1 made more sense because it was more applicable to different parts of my identity, essentially. And so that's what I've decided with, and I'm really excited about it, honestly. I do think that regardless of which surgery I got, there's still probably going to be days where I will feel at least somewhat dysphoric over it, which is a strange thing to say, you know, to have surgery and still feel dysphoric. But I think it'll immensely relieve the dysphoria that I have now, and I think that the dysphoria that I'll have after it will be much more minimal, and the euphoria that I have after it will be a lot more. And so it's still the better option, even if I don't have a 100% perfect option, if that makes sense. That's how I came to that decision. So that's something to try out, if whether it's a decision about transitioning or if it's just a decision about moving away or whatever the case. Like, I think, you know, documenting it, whether it's on a calendar app or in your notes on your phone or in a notebook or whatever, I think seeing day in and day out how you feel about something can really put things into perspective, which ironically is actually the name of the app that I downloaded. It's called Perspective. But, you know, because I'd be like, well, sometimes I feel this way and sometimes I feel this way, but I really couldn't give a concrete answer. But once I started like listing it out day in and day out, I'm like, oh, like this is why, this is what makes sense. And I could kind of like formulate it, I guess, in a way that made sense and make a decision that was more applicable to more areas of my life. And also on top of that, in general, I feel better about option 1, you know, walking around my everyday life, where what was confusing me more was when I'm sharing myself with other people, that was when the confusion came into play. But I feel really content with version 1. You know, if I was to never touch another person again in my life, or no one was to touch me again in my life, I think I'd want option 1 regardless. So that's basically everything I have to say about all of that. That's how I came to this decision. I'm super hyped for surgery. I cannot wait. I mean, I can wait. I have to wait. But like, but I'm super excited. I'm actually surprised at how excited I am. I thought I was gonna feel more, like I said, I have problems with committing to things, so I thought I was gonna be like, but like, what about this and this and this? And I don't feel that way. For me, and I'm not saying that this is necessarily the way that everybody needs to go about their life, because everybody's different and some people can be content with certain things that I am not content with. But for me, like, especially recently, like probably within the past year, I don't want to settle, whether that's in relationships or in my transition or in my, you know, any part of my life, really. I want to be exactly where I want to be and not be somewhere that's, oh, it's okay and it's manageable. I want to be at a place where I feel really fulfilled in every area of my life. And so if getting surgery and having a recovery time and having to take off work and having to not rewire my brain, but I assume or theorize, whatever, that there's going to be a lot of mental, not great stuff that comes with this at first that I'll have to work through, and like emotional things, and like having a new body, regardless of how much you've wanted it, is just, it's a new thing, and it's gonna be hard, or I'm expecting it to be hard, but I'm okay with that, because in the end, I'm gonna be happier. You know, in my opinion, it's worth it to go through awful things, or terrible things, or bad things, or whatever, negative things, in order to come out on a brighter side. And that's, you know, surgery is not like fun. Like, no one would just get surgery if they didn't have to, or there wasn't like a reason for it, you know. It's not just like a nonchalant thing, and it is gonna be hard, but I think that the other side is gonna be brighter, and I'm really excited for that, and that's what I care about. So that's how I came to this decision. I appreciate all of you listening. Hopefully the calendar trick or whatever works for you if you're struggling with coming to a decision about something. But if not, I hope you like my video. I will see you at some point. Have a nice day. Bye.